The most mentally resilient people on earth have been running the same morning protocol for over 5,000 years. Neuroscience just caught up and confirmed why it works. If you skip this window every morning, you're not just losing productivity. You're actively letting your brain wire itself for anxiety, reactivity, and drift. Here's how to stop that. In this video, I'll show you number 1, why the first 20 minutes after you wake up is the single most important window for your mental health and what's actually happening in your brain during it. Number 2, the specific 3-part morning practice that Vedic tradition has used for millennia and what modern neuroscience says about each piece of it. Number 3, how to build this into a real 20-minute protocol you can start tomorrow, even if you're not a morning person. And even if your mornings are chaos, let's get into it. A few years ago, I spoke with a man named Arjun, software engineer, mid-30s, sharp as anyone I'd met. He told me he'd tried every productivity system on the market. He had a journal he never opened, a meditation app with a 3-day streak, and a morning alarm set for 6 a.m. that he'd been snoozing until 7:45 for 8 months straight. He wasn't lazy. He was losing the first battle of the day before he even opened his eyes. And that first battle, that 20-minute window right after waking, was quietly determining everything else that followed. Here's something most people never learn about their own brain. When you wake up, your brain doesn't immediately snap into the fast, alert beta wave state it runs on during the day. For a window, usually 10 to 20 minutes, sometimes longer, it stays in what neuroscientists call a theta dominant state. Theta waves are the same brain waves active during deep meditation, creative flow, and REM sleep. Your brain is literally still half dreaming. This is the hypnagogic window. And it is, neurologically speaking, the most malleable state your brain enters in a normal day. Here's what malleable means in practice. The neural pathways that govern your emotional baseline, your habitual thought patterns, your default stress response, they are at their most plastic right now. They can be shaped. What you feed your mind in this window gets absorbed differently than at any other time of day. At the same time, your cortisol is spiking. This is called the cortisol awakening response, a natural biological surge that peaks roughly 30 to 45 minutes after waking. Cortisol gets a bad reputation because we associate it with chronic stress, but in this context, it's doing something useful. It's mobilizing energy, sharpening focus, and priming your system for action. Your brain and body are essentially handing you a loaded tool and saying, "What do you want to build with this?" Most people answer that question by reaching for their phone. When you do that, you're not just wasting the window, you're actively filling your most plastic neurological state with reactive content. Other people's emergencies, social comparison, algorithmic outrage. Your theta state brain absorbs that input the same way it would absorb a Mahan true or a focused intention. The difference is what gets wired in. This is why morning routine mental health isn't a wellness trend. It's neurobiology. The question isn't whether your morning shapes your brain. It does every single day. The question is whether you're the one doing the shaping. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Vedic tradition identified this window thousands of years before we had the instruments to measure brain waves. They called it Brahma Muhurta, which translates roughly as the hour of Brahma, or the creator. It falls in the period roughly 90 minutes before sunrise. The text described this time as uniquely suited for what they called consciousness training, the deliberate cultivation of your inner state before the world rushes in. That's not mysticism. That's a precise, empirically grounded observation that predates modern neuroscience by millennia. The takeaway here is simple but worth sitting with. You are not neutral in the morning. Your brain is actively wiring itself in those first minutes. The only variable is whether you're directing that process or leaving it to chance. Pru Bupada, in his commentaries on Vedic practice, describes the Brahma Muhurta routine as having 3 distinct movements, not one, not a general be mindful instruction, 3 specific sequential practices. And when you map them against what we now know about neuroscience, the precision is striking. The first movement is Mahantru repetition. In the Vedic system, this means the focused, rhythmic repetition of a sacred sound, most commonly the Har Krishnu Maha Mahantru, or simply Om. But before I lose the secular viewers, stay with me, because the mechanism here has nothing to do with belief. What Mahantru repetition does neurologically is activate what's called the default mode network suppression response. Your default mode network is the part of your brain responsible for self referential chatter, the inner monologue that replays yesterday's argument, rehearses tomorrow's anxiety, runs the background commentary on everything you do. It's the mental noise that most people carry all day without realizing it. Focused rhythmic repetition, whether it's a Sanskrit mantra, a simple word like peace, or even a focused breathing count, interrupts that network. It gives the mind a single point of attention, and in the theta dominant morning state, this focused attention practice creates what researchers call neural quieting, a measurable reduction in the background noise that drives reactive thinking and emotional dysregulation. This is the first piece of what makes morning routine mental health work at a structural level. You're not just calming down, you're training the attention system itself during the window when that training sticks most. The second movement is reflection. In the Vedic texts, this takes the form of contemplation on core teachings, sitting with a verse, a principle, an idea that reorients your understanding of who you are and how the world works. Prabhupada is specific that this isn't casual reading, it's slow, focused absorption. You take one idea and you turn it over. Neuroscience has a name for what this produces. It's called top down emotional regulation. Most of us regulate our emotions bottom up. Something happens, we react, and then maybe later we think about why we reacted. Top down regulation works the opposite direction. You deliberately install a frame, a perspective, a value, a way of seeing before the day's events arrive. When those events hit, your prefrontal cortex has something to work with. This is why journaling, reading a meaningful passage, or sitting with a single question in the morning isn't just feel good self help, it's prefrontal priming. You are literally giving your rational brain a head start on your emotional brain. And in the theta state, that priming is absorbed more deeply than it would be at 2 p.m. The third movement is intentional orientation, what the Vedic tradition calls sankalpa, which means a resolve or a vow, not a to do list, not a schedule review, a single clear statement of how you intend to show up today. The research on this is unambiguous. Implementation intentions, specific, I will do X in situation wide mental rehearsals, increase follow through on behavior by 200 to 300% compared to vague goals. When you set an intention in the morning, especially in a focused, quiet state, you are preloading a behavioral script. Your brain recognizes the trigger situations faster and responds more automatically. So, the three-part practice is quiet the noise, install a frame, set a direction, mantra or focused attention, reflection on something meaningful. One clear intention for the day, that's the architecture. Ancient in origin, neurologically precise. Let me be direct about something. Most morning routine advice is designed for people who already have their lives together. Wake up at 5 a.m., meditate for an hour, journal 3 pages, cold plunge, make a smoothie. If your morning looks like that, great. But most people I talk to have kids or inconsistent sleep or a job that starts early, or a brain that genuinely does not function before 7:30 a.m. So here's a 20-minute protocol that works in the real world. It's built on the three-part structure we just covered. And the key design principle is this. It protects the window without requiring you to be a monk. Minutes 1 through 5, the arrival. Before you stand up, before you check anything, sit upright in bed or move to a chair. Close your eyes. Take 5 slow breaths, in through the nose for 4 counts, out through the mouth for 6. That extended exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It slows the cortisol spike just enough to make it useful instead of overwhelming. Then for the remaining 4 minutes, do your focused attention practice. If you have a mantra you connect with, use it. If not, simply repeat a single word on each exhale. Clear, present, steady, anything that carries meaning for you. The content matters less than the continuity. You're training attention, not performing a ritual. Minutes 6 through 12. The frame. Open your eyes. Read one thing, one paragraph, one passage, one idea that reorients you toward the person you want to be. This channel exists for exactly this purpose. Vedic wisdom reframed for the way you actually think, but it could be a page from a book, a passage you've written yourself, a principle you're working with. The point is slow absorption, not information consumption. After you read it, sit for 2 minutes and ask, what does this mean for how I move through today? Don't write a dissertation, just let the question breathe. This is the reflection movement. You're doing top down emotional regulation before the day has given you anything to react to. Minutes 13 through 17. The direction. Now you write. One sentence. Your sankalpa for the day. Not, I will be more patient. Specific. When my colleague interrupts me in the meeting, I will pause before I respond. Or, when I feel the pull to scroll at lunch, I will step outside instead. Implementation intention, not aspiration. If writing isn't your thing, say it out loud. Say it twice. The vocalization creates an additional encoding pathway. Your brain registers spoken commitments differently than silent ones. Minutes 18 through 20. The threshold. 2 minutes, nothing, no input, just sit with what you've just done. Look out a window if you can. Let your nervous system integrate. This is the transition from the practice to the day. That's it. 20 minutes. No app required, no special equipment, no perfect conditions. And here's what changes when you do this consistently. And I mean within 2 weeks, not 2 months. Your baseline reactivity drops, not because you've solved your problems, but because you've stopped letting your problems write the first chapter of every day. Your brain's default orientation shifts from what's wrong to what matters. That is morning routine mental health working at the structural level, not the surface level. Arjun, the engineer I mentioned at the start, messaged me about 6 weeks after he started this protocol. He said the strangest thing had happened. His mornings hadn't gotten easier, his job was still stressful, his kids still needed things the moment he walked downstairs. But he said he felt like he was meeting the day instead of being ambushed by it. That's the shift. That's what 20 minutes actually buys you. 7 mornings is the minimum to feel the shift. But if you've already tried building a morning practice on your own and you keep hitting the same wall, whether that's consistency or the practice feeling hollow or not knowing what to actually focus on during those quiet minutes, that's not a willpower problem. That's a design problem. And design problems are solved fastest in a conversation, not a video. I do free 15 to 30-minute calls. No pitch, no agenda, just a direct conversation about where you are and what's actually in the way. You'll walk away with a clear next step that fits your specific situation, whether we ever work together or not. The link to book is in the description at dailymindreset.com/consultation. If you've been circling this stuff for a while and you're ready to stop circling, that's the call to book. And if this kind of teaching is useful to you, subscribe. We go this deep every week. Tell me in the comments, what does your first 10 minutes after waking actually look like right now? Be honest.